Hey guys, Kevin with On Point Pro Styles in Gainesville, Georgia. In this video, we're going to discuss setting up your Workhorse 2 plotter from beginning to end, including some troubleshooting tips to look out for. Now, this is assuming that you've already set the stand up, and if you need a video on how to do that, we've got one. Definitely check that out. We need the stand set up, we need the machine mounted to the stand. We're ready to power it on and start doing some test cuts. There's a few things that we need to set up. These things come pre-calibrated and pre-set up to cut film right out of the box with a couple of small settings. That's also going to depend on the film that you use and the thickness of the film. So these settings are not going to be the end-all be-all. But in the event that you use some of the most common thickness of films, this should get you cutting fairly quickly. Now, my machine is already pre-set up and I'm not gonna change it. I've had my machine for a while now. It cuts really, really well, so I don't wanna change any of my settings. I run a little higher gram force because I put Teflon strip over my cut tape. That's something you can look into if that's something you want to explore. So it drives my gram pressure up just a little bit higher, and I run my machine a little bit faster than the recommendation. That being said, the faster the machine runs, sure, it makes the cuts a lot quicker. In the event something goes wrong, it makes a lot more damage before you can fix it. So keep that in mind. If you're getting more and more comfortable with your machine, start with the recommendation they have. As you get more and more comfortable with the machine, your settings are good, you're not having issues, the film's not bunching up, it's not tracking left and right, and you're real confident that you're gonna be able to do large cuts and not have to worry, then you can slowly start to bump your speed up, but keep it within reason. So let's go over a few steps. Like I said, if you haven't set the stand up and you need a help video with that, we've got one, go check that out, and make sure the machine is mounted to the stand. I'll also note that in the event at the end of this video, if you still have a few issues, I'm gonna give you some troubleshooting tips along the way that you can watch out for. Hopefully those get you going, but if the film's a little different that you use than what we use, and your settings have to be changed, or say you have a tape on your cut strip, then I've got a generic, just how to set up a new blade and a new blade holder from start to finish without knowing any settings, how to get it to start cutting right, using the test function on the machine, and also finding what downforce you'd need to use. So basically from scratch without any of the information that I'm gonna be sharing with you. So let's get over to the plotter and I'll show you what's going on. So here we are, this is my Workhorse 2. I assume, like I said, you've already got it set up to this point. We haven't made the connection to the computer yet, maybe you have, but all the pinch rollers can now be placed in all of their respective spots because the rollers have been redesigned to not leave marks or imprints on the film. So pretty cool, you can now just set them, forget them, no more moving rollers back and forth, so that's really cool. Next thing you want to do is make sure on the back that you look for the tension screws and make sure all the tension is released on the screws. You don't want any additional tension when it comes to the tint. So just double check those and make sure they're all completely loose. Now, remember to check them every once in a while because obviously them being loose, them sitting in there, they're really, really loose. And as you run the machine a couple weeks, things like that, they're gonna back out a little bit. So you wanna just make sure they're just off the tension spot. And I'll show you how to do that here in just a second. So behind the machine are all your pinch roller with the tension springs. These are the tension screws. Turn them clockwise and they're gonna create tension. Counterclockwise, they release tension. So you want them to a point where they're literally just sitting there nice and loose, all of them. Don't forget to double check them every once in a while and just make sure they're screwed in enough they're not gonna fall out. Now that we've got the pinch rollers in their positions and the tension screws released on all of them, now we'll grab our empty blade holder and our brand new 25-degree blade. Take the gold ring, which is the locking ring, break it loose. Take your blade, make sure it's clean, no free of debris, and drop it with the blade tip obviously on the out or pointing outward. Drop it all the way down into the blade holder and then set the blade amount out about half the width of a credit card. So take your debit card or credit card, put it next to the blade, and you want it approximately half the thickness of that. Take the gold ring, lock it down. That's it. Now, move your carriage head over by hitting the on-off line, force left button or force down. You'll unscrew the carriage for the blade holder, drop your blade in. I've already got one in there, but we're going through the process. So unscrew that, drop your blade holder in, snug it up, don't go crazy tightening it down. It is plastic, you don't want to break it, but get that put in there. Machine set up, it's ready to start making cuts. The last thing we need to do before we can set it up to the software is we're gonna hit our enter button to get back to speed force. You're gonna use your force keys to set the down force to between 39 and 42 grams. And you're gonna use your speed up and down and set the machine to 252 millimeters. Once you have all that done and set up, make sure your cables are plugged into your computer. If you're just now doing that, cut your machine off before you plug it into your PC, then cut your machine on. So let's look at the software. I'm gonna show you how to add the plotter to the software and set up a couple of key preferences in there to make our cuts the best they can be. So let's go to the computer. Now that we've got the machine set up and ready for cuts, let's make the connection to the software. This is gonna be for the Film Cut software. I'll do a later video regarding the Film Cut Pro, but this is for the Film Cut software. So let's get into the software. Now I've turned off my machine, made my USB connection to the PC as well as the power plug plugged up to a power source, and turned my machine back on, and then I opened up the software. So I should be able to just find my plotter. We're gonna go up here to Edit, Options. In this box, we're gonna click I have nesting for the default layout. I have nesting, default units. I have inches. We can go over all this in another video. You can copy that and it's gonna be perfectly fine. So the first thing, you got pull mode. Make sure that at least for Tint, and I recommend for PPF, if you're running PPF on this as well, make sure both of those are checked. In the post feed length, I personally have mine set at 2.3 inches. It's about a 1/4 inch past the cut guide on the machine. You can definitely set that to the recommended of 4 inches, and that'll feed out, another 1.5 inches worth of film past the last cut. Once those are set, click Set Up Plotter. The software looks for any plotters that are plugged into your machine. Should have a list right there. You click it, select your plotters now linked to your software. Now, in the event you open that screen up and you do not see your machine, go through the steps again, go all the way back, turn the machine off, shut down the software, check your cables, make sure you've got good power, your screen's lit up on your plotter, and your USB cable is good and firmly plugged in, as well as your power cable, firmly plugged into both ends, and you've got good connections. Restart the plotter, then restart the software. Shouldn't have any issues. Once all that's done, you've selected your plotter, pull mode cutting is both set, you've set your post feed length. Again, you can go with 4 inches here. That's their recommendation. I use 2.3. It is very close to the cut line, so add a little bit for air. Close this box and you're ready to start cutting, or at least testing. So we're gonna do a couple of test passes on the machine and see where we're at. Now we gotta load some film so we can do some testing. Real quick while we're back here, covering this once again, make sure there's no tension on any of the tension screws. Make sure they're loosened all the way up, and make sure that the roller, you just grab it like this, is slid directly over the middle of each positioned lower roller. So make sure that these are slid right in the middle. There we go. We'll take my roll of film, put it on the media rollers. This is a static string. We're gonna run the film behind that static string. Press the film flat against the back of the machine, kind of creating a curl. And then we just use our fingertips on the other side to pull it through. I pull a little extra film through, little tension on it, keep it straight. Take the roller locker, lock it down. So at this point, we've got our machine set up with the plotter, we've got the preferences set properly, cut on the pull, post feed after cut. I've taken a short roll of some film. We're gonna do a couple of test cuts utilizing the test feature on the machine, and then we'll do a test cut from the software and should be ready to go to work. So I put my film in. I'm not worried about where the position of the rollers are. I don't plan to do very many cuts with the test function. It's only a 1-inch square. So I've put it in where it's easily accessible. I've locked my rollers down again. No tension on the screws. Lock the rollers down, on off. Move the carriage over and the film back, or this is at least what I need to do. Utilize as much film as possible. Now I'm gonna hit the test key. Pull the film out. And I'm looking, that was the triangle in the middle of the 1-inch square, which broke away perfectly, and the 1-inch square weeded well. Mine's already set up, but you might have to go through a few things. If the square doesn't cut out really well, or it doesn't weed out very well, bump your force up 1 notch. Or if it's too much and you feel it kind of breaking through the liner in the back, bump your force down 1 notch. But as long as your blade is set to about half the width of a credit card, you should be within the range of 39 or 42 or close there. So don't freak out if you're a notch or 2 above 42 or right at the 39 mark. That's the general. That should get you started real close right out of the box, and those settings should work. So square's cutting out nice. I'm gonna set my film in a position where I can do a test cut. I'm gonna go to the software and I'm gonna select a 1/4 window, which is a decent size. No reason to do anything much larger than that. We'll cut that out. If I can successfully weed it, we're ready to go. So let's grab us. We're gonna select Tint here. I'm gonna grab a 21 Toyota Camry. This is the part where I showed you that I set it into the nesting feature, so my patterns come up here as opposed to in a list over here. I'm gonna grab one of the 1/4 windows. We're gonna leave it right where it's at, and we're gonna hit the test button, or I'm sorry, the cut button right here, and cut this pattern out and see how well it does on the plotter. So let me hit cut, and we'll get back over to the plotter. See how we did? We've done a good job. We're ready to go to work. Now for PPF, you're gonna need another blade. PPF needs to be cut with a 60-degree blade. I would recommend getting an extra blade holder that you can throw the 60-degree blade in and have it all the time, so it's a quick just blade holder change out. But that being said, the 60-degree blade needs to be out just a little bit further than half a credit card, almost about the thickness of a credit card, and you're gonna need to add tension to the screws in the back. So as we went through in the video before, clockwise, add tension to all the pinch rollers that are feeding the PPF in and out of the machine, and bump your force up to about 177, and that should get you close or started. Run a couple test cuts, the test feature on the machine, same as you would the film, and then you should be right in the ballpark. But that's for PPF, so definitely get another blade holder for that. But 60-degree blade for the PPF. Last but not least, I want to go through a couple of things to watch out for on your machine. Things that can go wrong, things that can go bad. If in the event you do a couple of cuts and the weeding's not all that great, if you've had the machine for a short time, let's say a couple of months, you've made a lot of cuts, and all of a sudden the weeding gets a little bit harder, it wants to tear more than usual. That's usually going to be a sign of one of two things. It's going to be either your cut strip is bad or your blade is dulling, which is a natural thing. Now blades are supposed to last months and months and months for a very long time, as long as they're maintained properly, and that's what we're going to go over now. Now make sure the blade holder has this push out button on the end so that you can push the tip of the blade out, blow on it a little bit, wipe it off with your fingers very gently, and make sure that there's no dust and debris, because as you cut, it will build up dust and debris. That blade has to float inside that blade holder and be able to spin freely. Another thing you can do, about once a week, keep WD-40 on hand, put it on a rag, and make sure that you wipe this portion of the blade, the back side of the blade, and keep it well lubricated. Not enough that it drips down to the tip, but keep that well lubricated inside this blade holder so it's nice and free and can spin as it needs to make the cuts that it needs to. Another thing, regularly inspect your cut strip. It should last a very long time, provided that the settings we went through stay the same. But make sure you look at it. One of the only ways to tell that the cut strip is bad is either bad cuts, meaning the weeding's not very good, you know you've got a good blade. You'll have to look really close at the cut strip and check for any gouges or cuts or horizontal cut lines in the cut strip, which will make for uneven cuts. You'll have spots that'll be cut through all the way and they weed fine, then all of a sudden it wants to tear away and you get 6 inches, 8 inches, 10 inches of a spot that didn't cut all the way through. And that's usually because of a void in the cut strip. If that's the case, look into some techniques. I have a Teflon strip on mine, so that does change my settings a little bit, but I like the fact that I can just change the Teflon strip as opposed to the whole cutting strip. The best use of the machine is to utilize the cutting strip and keep it in good shape. And in the event it goes bad, Plotter Depot has all the parts you need. You can get another cutting strip. Keep the machine clean, free of debris. It's gonna get dusty, it's in a shop environment. Don't underestimate it. Don't think that you can run it forever and it's just gonna keep working. It will keep working and keep working. And then when it doesn't, it doesn't. And then it's aggravating. Is it a blade? Is it a cut strip? Is it something else? Keep the machine clean and tidy. Keep your blade holder clean, your blade oiled, and make sure that your cutting strip's in good shape. Other than that, this thing should last a very long time and make many, 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 many cuts. Another thing about the blade dulling, if you've used it 2 or 3 months down the road, you notice that tearing effect. The first thing to try is add a button or 2 worth of downforce. The blade's gonna dull within a couple of months, usually, and don't just rip the blade out and throw it away and put another one in there. Yeah, they're cheap, keep a couple extra on hand in that event, but you can get longer out. You can get more months out of that blade just adding a little bit of downforce. If you've gone and added 10 or 15 grams more of downforce, you're probably pushing the limit on that blade. You wanna get rid of it, put you another blade in there. So make sure you keep extra blades, they're cheap. Have 3 or 4 extras on hand so you're just ready to go. I have extra blade holders. I have blade holders set up for PPF, tint, vinyl, because this thing will cut all of that. Speaking of PPF, with PPF, in the event that you run this machine to cut PPF, it's a much thicker material, so you'll have to add tension to all the screws that are running the PPF in and out of the machine. So you'll want to tighten the tension screws up on that, and you're going to want to add gram force all the way up to 177 grams. It's a very thick material. I've tested it, and that is 100% true. So make sure that you keep that in mind. The PPF is going to need tension on the screws, and you're going to need to run your gram force up to 177 grams, or again, plus or minus a couple of grams. But anyways, that's pretty much it. That's the biggest thing to watch out for. You're ready to go. Now, in the absolute rare event, I would be lying if I said it hadn't happened, but in the rare event you're cutting along and you notice that a back window on, say, the Honda Accord you're doing is just a little bit short, there is a calibration feature built into the software. I'll show you real quick how to use that. It's pretty easy, but you shouldn't have to use it. But in the event that you do, it is there. So let's get in the software and I'll show you how to do that real quick. So in order to calibrate the plotter, you're going to go to Edit, Options, Plotter, Calibrate, Plotter Calibration. You're going to want to cut first and foremost. So make sure you have film set up into the machine's ready to cut. Click the cut button and it's going to cut out a square of 254 millimeters wide by 254 millimeters tall. Make sure you have a ruler, a good ruler that has millimeters on it, and precisely measure the width from side to side. If it's a different number, say 252 millimeters, enter that value here. If the height of that square is the same or different, enter that value here. Click Save, and that should compensate for the value they want the plotter to cut and what your plotter's actually producing. So make sure that you're very precise on those numbers and you shouldn't have any issues. With all that being done, you're ready to go to work. Your plotter should be cutting very well. The pattern should be weeding very well. This is not the end all be all. This is the get you going quick. And you'll always continue to play with it, adjust it, little tiny bits here and there. And that's as you grow and you learn the plotter and your blades and blade holders and film, you'll continue to mess and adjust with the settings and such. But for now, provided that you see what I saw on your machine, you're ready to go to work. You can pull a car in, you can cut out all the windows, shrink them, install them. If you need any help, reach out to me, Kevin Rogers with On Point Pro Styles in Gainesville, Georgia. I'm on all the social media platforms. If you need help, reach out to plotterdepot.com. They're happy to help. Thanks for watching.